Welcome to Global Risk Community Chat. Today our guest is Vid Hribar. I'm very happy to have you here today, Vid. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Yeah, thank you as well for joining us. Before we get into the topic, can you briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. So my name is Vid Hribar. I'm originally from Slovenia, but currently I'm working in Vienna in blockchain hub of Raiffeisen Bank International. I'm a lawyer by profession, but quite quickly I realized that I do not want to practice law, and my focus somehow shifted to banking. And back in 2017, I also started exploring blockchain through cryptocurrencies, and this enabled me to, yeah. And a while ago, I had the opportunity to join the blockchain hub of Raiffeisen Bank International, and this enabled me to combine my private passion with my work, which I think is quite a common thing in crypto industry.
Yeah.
Here in Blockchain Hub, we follow the market trends. We run experiments on blockchain with different areas of business, and also we help to shape the strategy of our banking group.
Yeah. Sounds interesting, actually. So then what is the connection between banks and then blockchain, and what the banks are doing with blockchain? Because I'm hearing about banks and the blockchain.
Yeah, so often I have to also explain to my friends what I do, and they normally say, oh, so you work with cryptocurrencies. And even though these two things are related, there's still a distinction to be made. So blockchain is the underlying technology on which cryptocurrencies are built. And even though cryptocurrencies were the first application of blockchain, now we have many more use cases of blockchain. But to take maybe a step back, blockchain, and to explain what blockchain is. So blockchain is a shared distributed ledger or database, which enables a peer-to-peer network and transactions based on rules which are coded into the system. And the direct consequence of the fact of this fact is that people can interact with each other peer-to-peer, and this makes the intermediaries redundant, which was not the case before blockchain. So you know that we live in a world full of, let's say, central intermediaries, including banks. And by removing these intermediaries from some processes, there's a potential to reduce the costs, to make the transactions faster and even more secure. And this was also spotted by the banks, which saw not just threats, but also opportunities in blockchain. And currently, blockchain is being used in four main areas, which are, on one side, trade finance, tokenization of assets, FX business, and payments. But I expect that there will be many more in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm hearing, of course, these multiple areas. And could you perhaps elaborate on one or two of these areas?
Yeah, sure. So from these areas, I personally see the most potential in the area of tokenization of assets and payments. Tokenization is, in simple words, just process of putting the ownership of assets on blockchain. And this enables a much smoother transfer of assets and also opens the opportunities for new business models. Currently in banking, the most popular product to be tokenized is a bond. So you can imagine that back then, in the times of a paper certificate, paper bond certificate, we of course needed a central party, like a central security depository, to establish the trust between the parties that wanted to interact and that wanted to do a transaction. And here the central party holds the register of all these transactions. But in tokenized world, the need for this intermediary would not be there anymore. So because all the participants of this database share the same ledger, and they all know who the owner is. And other benefits also arise from the fact that we can fractionalize these assets. So this means we can split them into smaller pieces, which of course also brings more liquidity to the market. And there's one more feature of blockchain, which is, in my opinion, really important, and this is smart contracts. These are execution mechanisms, automatic execution mechanisms, which can reduce the manual work that we currently do And in the example of bonds, this would, for example, be automatic interest payment. The second big area, in my opinion, are payments. Here we've seen big developments starting with Bitcoin in 2008. And Bitcoin showed us that cross-border payments can be done with low costs, can be done in real time, and also can be done peer-to-peer, so without any intermediaries. The problem with Bitcoin was that the price is very volatile. And for these reasons, also stable coins appeared, which took many of the benefits that Bitcoin showed, but also brought or solved this price volatility problem by pegging the value to a fiat currency or to another, let's say, stable asset. And when Facebook started with their project Libra, and they wanted to issue a global stablecoin, this was a wake-up call for the central banks. They also started to develop central bank digital currency, or CBDC, and there are now many projects around the globe, and the majority of central banks are experimenting or working with some kind of CBDC. So here, I would say the future is still quite unclear. We see what the benefits are, and we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. I believe that these solutions can coexist and will coexist, but I believe it's yet unclear which use cases they will cover.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's still a very uncertain topic, so it's still a bit, interesting actually. But well, I hear you mention cryptocurrencies, of course, and I'm kind of curious on the thing also you mentioned with the bank. So we see that there are a lot of also new players offering cryptocurrencies right now. And do you think will banks also offer these kind of cryptocurrencies in the future, or why are they not offering them already? You know, like maybe something on that end?
Yeah. So I have to say that there are actually banks that offer cryptocurrencies to their clients, but they are very rare. So there are just a couple of them. We see this trend more and more banks are not just thinking, but also offering cryptocurrencies. And we see that this is mostly in jurisdictions where the regulators are more, let's say, liberal or open-minded. So the first issue is definitely still regulatory one. Secondly, in media, you can also hear often that cryptocurrencies are connected to illicit activities. And here I have to say, yes, well, some portion, in my opinion, a small portion of cryptocurrencies is used for illicit activities. I believe that here we have also more and more stricter regulation coming, which will force those who deal with cryptocurrencies, for example, crypto exchanges, also to perform more and more checks. And there are also tools on the market that enable, that help to determine whether a coin or a token was used in any of the illicit activities. Banks also need the internal know-how, how to deal with cryptocurrencies, and also the infrastructure. So this is also something new, and they have to build this. There's, of course, also reputational risk. Why? Because crypto assets are still very volatile, and it's still a very young market. But I believe that at the end of the day, everything comes down to know-how and understanding of the technology, and especially to those who make decisions. So you'll often hear this, but those who spend a bit more time understanding the technology and background of cryptocurrencies, they normally become the proponents of cryptocurrencies. So I believe here that fear and resistance often comes from not understanding, and that's why I believe it's important to share the knowledge and the messages that we have, also through channels like your podcast. So here I believe that banks have to overcome these issues, and I believe that this year will also be a big year for crypto adoption by the banks. I believe this is just the first step. This will open the doors also to other things, and to start thinking about other interesting applications, such as decentralized finance, non-fungible tokens, metaverse, Web 3.0. So these are all the industries that are growing at an incredible speed.
Yeah, I know. I absolutely agree, especially with stuff like metaverse and Web 3.0. It's still very vague, but it looks very interesting as well to explore. So let's see what future holds. So we are running quite out of time. So I have only one more question left for you, and that is perhaps if you could share like one takeaway point with our audience on like what they can, how they can start if they're interested in blockchain or crypto, or yeah, what would you recommend?
Sure. Sure. So I would first say it's still very early for this industry, and there are still many risks involved and challenges here. But we should not dismiss the whole industry based on those risks. I believe that this risk can be well mitigated in the future. So I think that we should rather turn the discussion from not just stating the risk, but also how we can overcome them and what are the opportunities. For those who want to start somewhere in this industry, I would say there's a lot of material also on the internet, but you can always also reach out to me, send me a message. You can find me on LinkedIn by just searching Vid Hribar. Yes, I think this could be a good start.
Yeah, no, super nice. And I think it was a very interesting outlook, or it was very enlightening, I think. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me and have a
Yes,
nice day.
you too.